Hi, this is Aaron Azrod, and welcome to the 14th episode of the Truth Island podcast. I'm joined here with Kenny, who is going to discuss with me whether being a social person is always a wise idea. Often, when children are growing up, we encourage them to make friends. Parents often schedule playdates, create birthday events, and often remain very concerned with how exactly their child is socializing in the world around them. When a child, for example, says that they have no friends, we often think that something is wrong and push them to join more clubs or just try a little bit harder in Little League. However, when that fails, we often seek the counsel of therapists and other experts in figuring out why exactly is it that our son or daughter isn't the life of the party. This fear extends into adulthood, as we often judge ourselves based on how many friends we have or how many parties we've been invited to in the past year. We often assume that a person that is a loner is somehow defective and not right for this world, and that if they would only change a number of things about them, they would fit in better. But what if being social isn't always such a good thing? Kenny, could you perhaps tell me your thoughts on how you view being social?
Being social is generally seen as a good thing, but there are times when being social can be actually the opposite of what you want to do. Because most people who are social are often running away from something, in that they are running away from questions, they're running away from being alone, existential dread. And so they want to buffer those feelings, those thoughts with the noise of, conversation. They want to buffer those feelings and thoughts with the noise of music and people being around them and all that.
Kenny, could you
Um,
expand a little bit on existential dread? What exactly does that mean?
why am I here? What is the point of life? Who
Ah,
am I actually? What is going on? Do I wake up in the morning for the dollar bill, or do I wake up in the morning for another reason? Do I actually live my life? And what does it mean to live my life? These are the kinds of questions that bring on these feelings of this terrifying feeling that you may not actually be living up to some potential. And there's always this weird feeling that there's something more to life. And with those feelings come questions. And with those questions come dread, because we don't know what the answers to those questions are.
it's funny because I think that many human beings, the one thing that they cannot deal with the most is uncertainty. So would you say
Mm.
that existential dread is like a great form of uncertainty? Like we fear not being where our next job will come from, and this kind of like existential dread is like fear of like life itself almost.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, but there are those who have, I mean, for example, there are those who have great jobs, great partners, great kids, great hopes in the future, but they still have these internal questions that they don't really know how to address. And it may still be uncertainty, but it's uncertainty about other things rather than the everyday life, everyday work, marriage, and relationships. It's usually sometimes more metaphysical than that.
So it's much deeper. It's why am I on this earth? What plan has God given me? Or am I like doing the right things with my life? It's much deeper than just finding like your next paycheck or finding your next source of food. It's like it's touching upon why exactly I'm here and what exactly I should be doing with myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even it might be even it might be more felt with those who are doing perfectly well. Because with those who aren't doing well, those who are looking for the job, those who don't have the money, those who don't have the girl, those who don't have the friends, they're looking for the money, the girl, the friends, and so forth. So they're busy doing things.
Ah,
But those who have everything their hearts could possibly desire, they have it, I mean, right there in their backyard. And they're wondering, why am I still so angsty? Why am I still so afraid? Or why am I still so unhappy? unfulfilled and so forth. Yeah.
That's interesting. So I think like existential dread is sort of an affliction of the rich because like if you're not that wealthy and you have to go to work every day and you're constantly busy trying to earn money and you're constantly busy, trying to get a girl or start a family and do all this other stuff, you don't necessarily have that time to wonder why it is that you're here.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, it's if if the if you're hungry, if you're hungry, you don't give a crap about questions like who am I and what's going on. You just want to eat.
True.
And so that's why a lot of people find that when they do lose their job or when they do leave that relationship, that these questions or these feelings begin to creep up, and and then they really want to, they look for the next job, and they look for the next girl or the next guy.
And that's like a form of being social. People want to run to work so that they can like I knew someone who was like, I really just want to get back into the office. Like he was like, I just want to be social again. I just want to talk with coworkers again. It may not even be like a bodily necessity to have that job, but we all strive to be in social communities. And that's kind of like a form of not being content with being alone, but needing to run into the next social interaction. And
Yeah, this is basically one of the first things that I noticed when I first came to the United States of America, is that young people work hard. I mean, everybody
could you
works
just
hard in the
remind
United.
our listeners where you're from originally?
Oh, I'm originally from Nigeria, West Africa, and I moved to the United States when I was about 19 years old. And I realized that Americans work really hard, and the youth in America work extremely hard as well. So you have kids working from the age of 14, 15, 16, and you're making good money. But from these young ages when they should be playing, and I don't get me wrong, I'm saying work is fine, but the
Right.
amount of work being done here is phenomenal. But where they should be playing and having fun, a lot of these kids end up working, and this is to them, this is what life is. This is the only thing that stabilizes their being.
That's interesting. So I think maybe like during childhood, it's probably important to have more, to be more social, and we're going to touch upon that in a little bit. Going back to this idea of existential dread, though, I remarked earlier that this was like an affliction or like a disease of the rich, so to speak, because they have the free time.
Yeah.
Thinking about that a little bit though, there's so many people now that have like lost their jobs due to COVID, and they're on unemployment. So perhaps like this existential dread is now sweeping over swaths of the population that never had this before because they were always too darn busy to think of it.
Yeah, I mean that's been the case. I mean, I asked my wife a couple nights ago to look up exactly what's been going on with the suicide rates, or and how many people have been calling in, and you find that a lot of people have been calling in because they are, they've been feeling more depressed, they've been feeling more suicidal, they've been feeling more hopeless and stuff like that. Then one might say, okay, it's because we're living in a time of of a pandemic.
Sure.
Um, but sure, but that may be the case, but that may not be the case. And here's why I would say that may not be the case is, we know that the average American loves, how you say, loves the social engagements and loves to work and all that. And
Yes.
there is even before before the COVID situation, there has been situations where people end up killing themselves because they've lost their jobs or because they've lost some social standing or something like that. The fact that people have to be at home right now, it means that they don't get as much social interactions, they don't get as much social gatherings, and they have to be alone with themselves and with their thoughts and with their fears. And that does drive people pretty crazy.
I love that. They have to be alone with their thoughts and their fears. I think that was definitely a lot of people, especially in March and April and May, perhaps, where it's like really everyone had to kind of bunker in. And the only people you probably saw were your family or your roommates, or if you lived by yourself, then it was probably just you all day. I'm wondering, though, why exactly people are afraid to be alone with their thoughts. It's like, do they think that they are like bad people inside? Do they think that they don't want to think too deeply? Or are they scared that if they just sit alone and think too deeply, they're going to discover something crazy or scary about themselves? I just can't wonder why it is. I'll talk about my social behavior, but definitely in the beginning, I was definitely alone a lot more than I was prior to the pandemic. But it's not something that scared me. I've usually am very comfortable with my thoughts. I'm wondering why this is like such a shock for most people. Why does it bring so much fear?
Well, I think that people's thoughts usually accuse them. We have more accusatory thoughts than we have reassuring thoughts. The average person sits down, 5 minutes alone, and the first thing they're hearing is, they see someone walk past, and the first thing is, they're prettier than me, or they're more handsome, or they're taller, or they're this and that, and I'm not this. And you find that often a person's mind, when they really face it, is often against them. It's very self-destructive. I would say that's one of the reasons. Another reason is, yeah, we generally think we're good people. This is where my own view of humanity comes in. I'm very pessimistic on a when I look at humanity as a whole. I'm pessimistic about humanity, but when I deal with individuals, I'm pretty optimistic. When I look at humanity as a whole, we often think
Same.
that we're good people. We really think we're all that. But when push comes to shove, we many of us never realize this, but when push comes to shove, we find out that we are not as good as we thought we were, and that really bothers us.
That reminds me exactly the first conversation that I had with Roger. With if you were starving, you would definitely eat somebody, or you would result in cannibalism. And I can be also a little bit negative at times, but I like what you said earlier about liking individuals, but not liking institutions. Like that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I have lost faith in the government. I've lost faith in big corporations and any kind of monolith institution. But I still I still find myself like impressed by human beings on a daily basis.
Yeah,
I can't like when I'm interacting with humans, especially in one-to-one settings. Like when I'm talking to people at work, everyone's a vulture and everyone's cutthroat and trying to like undo one another. But when
yeah,
I'm talking to somebody and there's no stakes on the table, it's just amazing level of generosity that I see from other people. And that gives me hope. It gives me hope
yeah.
that, okay, if human beings are, like John Locke says, fundamentally good inside, then perhaps there's hope in changing the system.
Yeah, I want to be as optimistic as that. I really do. I think that people, so just like you, when I meet individuals, I'm pretty amazed at who they are. I mean, just the average. Once met a lady who looked incredibly plain, and I don't mean this as a slight to her. It's just a descriptive. There was nothing remarkable about this woman when you meet her, but then she opens her mouth
Sure.
and she speaks, and I realized, my goodness, not only is she incredibly intelligent, but she's a movie buff. Jeez Louise. And she loves, you know,
I love
she,
that. I love those
and,
kind of
she,
surprises.
and then she introduces me to Kurosawa. She introduces me to films by oh, I forget his name, but some amazing films, and you realize that, goodness, she's a human being, and she has a life, and not just that, but now she's sharing her life with you.
It's
Um,
so funny you mentioned that story. Like in my time, I found like the people with like the nose rings and crazy tattoos and stuff. It's actually like the people that look very plain and are trying to fit in. Like I think that the people that are very weird on the inside, or let's not use the word weird, but let's say a little eccentric. They're the ones
yeah,
that are outwardly trying to fit in and be like, yeah, I'm just here wearing a tie and I'm normal like everyone else. And then it's the guy with the green hair that doesn't have any cool surprises
any
about
cool
them.
surprise? No, that I can see that. I can see that. It's true, because it's like they feel like they all their lives they've been eccentricities have been shut down, or have gotten them into too much trouble, and so you find that they want to start dressing up normal and being, just want to fit in, and so they don't stand out too much. But when you get to know them, you find that these guys are pretty darn weird, but in a good way,
Yeah, 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 and I find that too. I'm always and it's funny because it's like what we realize is that the people who stand out absolutely, like, they don't want to stand out. Like, they're actually actively fighting to look and appear normal. Like, they're
Yeah.
doing everything in their power to do that. And it can be sometimes interesting to watch because they try so hard to fit in, but it's
Yeah.
actually their uniqueness that you love about them.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's like it's catch 22. The more you want to, I mean, most people want to be different. They want, I mean, not, I would say everybody wants to be different. No one wants to be that guy that says, yeah, I'm just a normal guy doing normal things. No one wants to be that guy. Everyone wants to be something unique, something beautiful, something wonderful. I mean, the whole thing when you're a kid to tell you you're a snowflake, there's no other like you. It's cheesy, but there is a truth to it.
Well, there are some times in life though that you don't want to stand out, and I think being a teenager is
Yeah,
actually one of those times where you're, if you're eccentric in any such way, you're going to become like a target for bullies. And
absolutely.
I think that, like, it really depends. If you speak to people, for example, that came from communist countries or something, if you were outspoken in any such way, you could be a pariah or like some kind of victim to the secret police or something like that. So I think it all depends. Like, I think in American culture, we have this vision of like some very unique adult who's doing something special. But it's only when those people become famous or they become a brand or they become recognized that we're
Yeah.
like, wow, look how eccentric that dude is. But if we see some guy who's really eccentric and is, living in poverty or something, we don't look up to that person. We're like, yeah, dude, shave off your long beard and get a job and be like everyone else. So it's funny that we reward successful outliers, but then we don't reward the unsuccessful outliers.
Yeah, the big difference is money. Money makes things sexy. It's just
Yes.
that simple. Two guys can be courting the same girl, okay? She's interested in only one of them. They both do the exact same thing, buy her flowers and send her chocolate, right?
Right.
One of them, she says he's a stalker, ew. The other one, he says he's so romantic. The same thing. But she has an interest in one, right? The other one, she's not in any way interested in. And so money makes us interested.
I
Yeah.
like so yeah, like money. So money can actually, like, if you have a lot of money, then you can justify your quirkiness, and you can, like when Bill Gates does something eccentric, we're like, whoa, that's a part of his genius. And then
Yeah.
if we see like a homeless person doing something eccentric, we're like, well, that's why he's homeless. It's just like it's this double standard where if we, like, your eccentric behavior has to be profitable in some way. If it's not
Yeah.
profitable or doesn't lead to rockets and cool computers, we don't like you.
Exactly. It's a very strange world, but it's the world we're living in. And you find that it's affecting, it affects the way we raise kids. It affects our social norms and our social standards. It affects the way we even interact with ourselves, because we don't take ourselves seriously until someone has, couple weeks ago, I was talking to a friend about, making a music album. And he was telling me that he felt like a fraud doing it because he wasn't Led
Led
Zeppelin.
Zeppelin,
He,
yeah.
he wasn't, Guns N' Roses. Like, dude, those guys started like this. They they weren't born, with the millions. They weren't born with the fame. They weren't born with the talents. Would I say the accomplished talents? They had to start somewhere, and we find that we judge ourselves so harshly like that as well.
And it also kills innovation at a very infancy stage, because what happens is that there's two types of people. One type of person will start doing something eccentric or something that they're passionate about, like your friend who was actually trying to create music, and then they'll get laughed at or ignored and sort of beaten down by everyone around them. And then they could have produced Led Zeppelin quality music, but
Yeah,
because we sort of scorned them in the infancy of their career, they lost hope and they lost passion, and they just decided to get some 9 to 5 job and not do that. And now
yeah,
us as a society, we suffer. We suffer as a society because that person, we didn't build the confidence up in that person when they were in their infancy, and now we don't get to enjoy the fruits of their wonderful music.
I call it soul killing. You kill their soul. You kill that creative spark, that the inner hygge. It's just gone.
Why do you now this is actually making me kind of pessimistic. Actually, I started off this conversation optimistic. Now you're winning me over to the
Join the
pessimism.
dark side.
Yes, Kenny, I'm getting there closer. So I have this thing of why, when we see someone in our social circle that's that's shining very brightly, why do we have this impulse, or why do we have this urge to kind of throw shade on them? Like, I'm wondering, what is it? Is it jealousy? Is it fear? Like, what makes us say, no, you're not going to be the next Led Zeppelin. Just get in line with the rest of us folk here.
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of jealousy. It's a bit of fear. Because, when it comes to the jealousy, I mean, we often don't like people getting ahead of us. That's not always the case, but it's often the case. And then when it fear, because I mean, what if he fails? And you don't want to be the guy who encourages him to go try it and he fails. You know what I mean? You don't want to have his, quote unquote blood on your hands. And so you want to just nip it in the bud so that it doesn't come back to you. And so you find that you're making these decisions not based on the person. You're making a decision based on your own apprehensions.
I want to talk about the second thing you said, that like, if you encourage that person and then they fail, then you have blood on your hands. Yeah. But if you let's say you discourage that person and then they succeed, why don't you feel bad that you had blood on your hands because you tried to stop that great person? Like, I wonder why it is that we only look at it through one angle. Because
discouragement to us is far more virtuous than encouragement.
How so?
So if you stop him from achieving what he was supposed to achieve, you've done the adult thing. It's adult. You said, hey, listen, Jimmy, put down the guitar, and here's a calculator. You're now an accountant, okay? You've helped him put on his big boy pants. This is, I mean, our world encourages this. We clap at this, right? When the boy man grows up, and so anything that looks like that is inherently good. So when a young man wants to be a guitarist, he says, hey, man, I really want to play the guitar and I want to be the next Jimi Hendrix. And you tell him, listen, man,
I like your taste in music, by the way.
Thank you. You say, listen, man, let me bring you down to earth. Let me be the realistic friend here, okay? The chances of you making it as the next Jimi Hendrix is slim to none. So here's a college book on sociology or whatever. Go get a degree, and then maybe afterwards you can be the next Jimi Hendrix. That's realistic. But to look at him and say, after he's told you I want to be the next Jimi Hendrix, and you say, hey man, that sounds incredible, I'm 100% on board with this. In fact, here's some money, go buy what you need to buy, I hope you make it. That seems almost irresponsible to us and to the general norm.
Here's my thing. I don't know why we can't necessarily have both. And it's like, I was a teacher for many years, and I always said, I always gave this advice, and I want to see if you think that this is fair-minded advice. I always said, do exactly what it is that you are passionate about. Theater, acting, writing, music, whatever it is, and do it very nicely and well. It doesn't hurt to like have a backup plan. Like, okay, I'm still studying nursing on the side or something like that. I'm taking some classes here. And it's like, you can still attend that person's concerts. You can still read their short stories. You can still view their artwork and still like encourage them. And then you're just giving them like a second way. I don't know why it always has to be the extreme of like, put away that guitar and pick up that calculator. Like, I don't know why it has to be so absolute like that.
Well, it doesn't. We just make it that way. I mean, your students, one of the things that your students, you have no no skin in the game, right? I mean, I'm sure you care about your students, and in
Right.
fact, it's because you have no skin in the game that you might actually be able to care for them better. And I don't mean to slight parents or anything like that, but often parents have way too much skin in the game. For many, it's not, you're not looking at your child. You're looking at your child and what you want your child to be. You're looking at your child and what what grandma said last week about him. There's too much information that we don't know how to parse out. And so what you find is that we end up living in our passions rather than in our, with philosophical clarity. So parents or people are often more informed about their child by social standards, their own personal dreams, family traditions and stuff like that. And it just muddies the water to the point where you don't even see the kid anymore. All you're seeing is this potential for your something.
That's so beautiful, Kenny. I think that we always have the cultural thing. I think this whole idea in our culture of I want to raise my kid and I want them to go to the Ivy League. That's like you're not actually looking at your child at that point.
Yeah.
Because if you're just saying I want my child to go to the Ivy League and do this, you've stopped viewing your child as a human being or as some type of individual.
Yeah.
You're just seeing them as a truck that is traveling across the country to get where you need them to be.
Yeah, that's exactly it, man. And it's so weird, and it hurts so many kids. They go to college, they're unhappy. They graduate, they're unhappy. And then this unhappiness, they kind of this is part. So to bring it back to the existential dread, this unhappiness haunts them for the rest of their life. It really does. And you find that they end up being often very social people who don't want to deal with those kinds of questions. Like, why did I have to be a doctor? I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to dance, for goodness. I want to dance, father. But still,
I want to dance.
you know, but still, like, why did I end up being a doctor? Well, because you were forced to be a doctor. Why were you forced to be a doctor? Because, well, my parents or certain people had certain expectations on me. So I ended up being the vehicle of the expectations of others. And that can shatter a human being.
Yes,
You've lived
yes.
the last 5 to 10 years of your life hasn't really been your life. It's been somebody else's life. Time you can never get back, and that's scary.
And that is a huge argument for not being social because yeah, I think parents have probably the largest impact on the road we travel in this world, undoubted.
Yeah.
But it could come in the form of your significant other as well. Like
Yeah.
if your significant other believes that you need to be this prototype and you need to be this type of husband or you need to be this type of wife, then
Yeah.
that's another cage that you're now being locked into.
Labels and isms.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, going back to childhood, and I guess this is where we all get messed up in some way,
Mm.
right? You're a kid, and I think when you're in elementary school, mom and dad, or grandma, grandpa, like your family is probably the primary influence. And then as a teacher, like I've noticed, the kid hits middle school, now the friends are way more influential than any parent. Like every kid is sweet up until like fourth grade, and then once they hit middle school, now it's what my friends think about me that matters the
Yeah.
most. And I think
Yeah.
this is also another place where like we always blame, oh, it's the older adults that are killing our passion, but it's also your friends.
Yeah.
And I see so many kids that can be really nerdy and they like certain things. They like to geek out on maybe anime. They like to geek out on their drawings and all this other stuff. But then they have to keep that on the down low because
Yeah.
their social circle is going to be, oh man, you still play with Pokemon cards or something? Like they're gonna completely destroy them because they're into that kind of like childish or passionate, eccentric thing. And I
Yeah.
think that's a time where being alone, like I think, and teenagers do dumb things all the time. I think being alone as a teenager is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. It's I don't think it is. So this is my basic social foundation, my rules for social life. Okay. The first is be alone. The second thing is be with close friends only, and then be with anybody and everybody. But you need time, and you got to alone takes priority. Social, I mean, close and intimate friends comes up next. And I would say that's a good deal of your time. And then everybody and anybody, less, but still important to have. The aloneness is important because that's where you find out who you actually are. And that's where you find out who you actually are, what you like, what you dislike, what you affirm, what you reject. And without that, without being a full human being, you cannot function well in the other two categories. And so the being alone for the teenagers, and that time, that teen life is very important. That's actually when you start asking those questions. Who am I? You know,
Right.
am I emo? Am I, this is superficial, but am I a jock? Am I am I a nerd? Am I a geek? Like, who am I? And I think it's important that they be alone at those times. Yeah.
I like the Kenny system. So let's take a look at being alone. Do you allocate alone time on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis? Like how do you divide up? Okay, I need to spend 30% of my day alone. How do you do that, Kenny? Tell me the ways.
Okay, for me personally, you should construct it based on who you are.
Okay.
So personally, what I do is usually on a daily basis. And then I actually heard recently that I watched a documentary of Bill Gates, and he does Think Week or something
Hmm.
like that, where he removes himself from the rest of the world and goes to a small cabin somewhere and just spends his time thinking. So he takes a whole, is it Think Week or Think Month? I think it's Think Week. So he
Think
takes a
month.
whole.
I like that.
That's a
Bye,
lot of
everyone. I'm leaving
thinking,
to a
Bill.
cabin for a month. Yeah.
And so I think it's possible for people to figure out exactly what works for them. And so I choose on a daily basis to work this out for me.
Nice. Okay, so you have your 3 hours alone. I love my vehicle of escape right now, especially during COVID, is bike rides. And I am
Yeah,
so happy that the weather is nice that I can just escape alone and take a bike ride. I think that's awesome. Let's talk about your inner circle of
yeah,
friends. And this is something where I think having an inner circle of friends is important because you want people that you can trust and you can bounce ideas off of, and you want people that can give it to you straight. Because in
yeah.
the real world, no one's going to give it to you straight, and you might just be marching into the same wall over and over and over again. There does come a time, and this is bounces back to a conversation that I had with Claire, that what happens, like how do you assess your inner circle? Because sometimes someone in that inner circle, you may need a break from them. Like I'm wondering like how you manage that inner circle, because your inner circle changes. It's not always the same group of characters, and sometimes you need to shuffle them around a little bit, and sometimes you're like, okay, it looks like you're heading down a different path right now or a different journey, and it looks like we need to split. Do you have any advice about that, Kenny? How do you manage your inner circle?
I think that the inner circle is incredibly important.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, these people can either make you or break you. It's that bad. And so it's important that you not don't let people pick you into their inner circle. All
Oh,
right. In
I
that
like that.
you've got to pick the people you want around you. In that
And don't try and join another inner circle. Like if you're at
don't
work, if you're at work and you see that like all the girlfriends or something are doing that, and you know that those people aren't me. Like we don't get it. Like I have
yeah.
nothing in common. You gotta balance. You gotta just bounce out of that. Yeah.
You have to, because you don't want to be in a situation where you cannot be yourself, when you're pretending to be anything that you actually aren't. And so I would say that if you're in a situation where you have where your close and intimate friends aren't really that helpful. And here's the thing, you got to be careful, because you can't say, well, they're just bad People. No, yeah, they might be, but you yourself could also be, a bad person yourself. So
Sure.
figure it out according to your own conscience and according to your own honesty. Because there are friends, or should I say people, who seem like friends, but they aren't actually friends. They're not. And you want to really just remove yourself from there. You got to run away like your life depends on it, because your inner life, your soul, your peace of mind actually does,
I love that, Kenny. That's beautiful. You have to run away like they're lions chasing you. That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
And the other thing, the marker that I usually use when I know that I need to reevaluate my social circle is when I'm hanging out with these people. I'm very silent and I feel really alone. So I'm actually
Ooh,
I'm surrounded by these people at the bar, or I'm surrounded by these people, and I have nothing to say to them. They have nothing to say to me.
yeah.
I'm like, if someone was looking on from the outside, they'd be like, yeah, that guy has friends. I see him standing next, but they're not really my friends. I'm not saying anything, and I'm just alone in my thoughts. I'm just standing here, or sitting here, and there
Yeah.
happens to be people that are around me, but I'm alone.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, one of the ways to be certain that, or should I say, one of the, um, a little key points of knowing if you're in the right place is, let's just say you've known these people for, a good amount of time, because this doesn't work until you've actually known them, is when you stop noticing that you're there,
Yes, yes,
you
yes,
know,
yes, and they stop noticing you as well.
and they
Like
stop noticing.
yeah,
If you want to be silent together, you can be silent together. If you want to talk, you talk. And it just happens naturally, and nobody even thinks twice about it, you know?
it may not. It may, like, people think that it's something really, really terrible. Like, oh my God, these guys are about to rob a bank, and I don't want to be a part of it. But it could be that their interests are going in one direction, and your interests are going in another direction, and
Yeah.
neither one of you is right or wrong. Like, your friends are
Exactly.
not in the right, and you're in the wrong, or you're in the right and they're in the wrong. It's just like you have to have these moments in your life where it's like, it looks like I'm heading in this direction, they're heading in that direction. God bless them. I wish them the best on their journeys, but we've got to split ways here.
Yeah, I think C.S. Lewis once described friendship as people who are shoulder to shoulder looking at the same thing.
I like that. Wow.
And I think that's good. That's good imagery. Well, that's Lewis.
Looking at the same thing, the same
Yeah.
goals. I love that, Kenny. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And then finally, we're in the final circle here. How do you interact with the rest of everyone else out there? So should I start making friends with people on the subway?
Oh, that's the thing, is that these people, the people in the rest, in the other category, in the third category, which is everyone and everyone, everyone and anyone, you don't really have to be buddy buddies. You don't have to be close friends, and that could happen, but they're not. And that, so your only mission, and it is a mission. Trust me, man, it can be, is to love them. That's it, because you don't want to expect anything from just anyone and everyone.
Sure.
You're going into the world saying, okay, how can I be of service to anyone and everyone? Who is sad that I can cheer up? Who is hungry that I can feed? Who is, brokenhearted that I can, mend up? Who needs a friend today that I can be, that I can be a helping hand to, or whatever. So you already know yourself. You experience the interaction of yourself with other selves that you're close with in the inner circle, and now it's time for you to give. You know what I mean? Give to others that don't have the same things as you, that don't, think the same way as you, that don't see things eye to eye as you do. It's just about them now.
I love that. So it's almost as if when you're interacting with the rest of the world, you're on a mission. It's like you're on
Yeah,
a mission 24/7 of, this person seems sad. I'm just going to listen to them for a few minutes and
yeah,
maybe get this out of them. I like that because it makes like, well, I hear this a lot from people, but everyone's guilty of it. Is people say, I hate small talk. I hate small talk. I hate just talking about the weather and stuff.
yeah,
But if you're very purposeful and you're very meaningful with how you interact with strangers or just people outside of your immediate circle, you can actually have some very rich conversations. And
yeah,
from what I hear, from my time, just, maybe bar hopping when I was younger, people will, like, strangers will open up to you way more than, like, anyone close to you because they know they got nothing to lose. They know
Nothing to
they know that in an hour you're going to walk out of that bar and you're never going to see them again. So they'll actually get into the real deep stuff, what's going on their chest, because they can trust
Yeah.
you because you really can't do anything to them. You don't know them.
You don't know them. Yeah. I
Yeah,
had a weird experience a couple nights ago. My wife and I go on walks at midnight sometimes, but this night I decided to go alone because she was tired. And
sure.
I go down to, to the Friendship Square, we call it here. And it's midnight, and I see a group of guys walking towards me. And I'm thinking, can you imagine? First thought is, okay, get ready for a fight, Kenny. That's the world I'm living in. Like what? Like, what? Like weird. And so they come to me and they do stop. They stop it. They stop right where I'm sitting and they look at me and they say hi and they start talking to me and they're all drunk. They're all
Yeah, yeah.
face drunk, right?
That's
And they
the right
start talking.
kind of drunk, right? Like the happy drunk. Like I want to be everyone's friend drunk.
Exactly, and they're shaking my hand. One of them says, "Hey man, can I pray for you?" And I'm there, in the middle of the night, sitting down there, having these drunk guys pray for me, and it was weird, but it was lovely.
Those are the positive. And you know what's funny is that if you read the news, it's always like that story you just described. We only hear about the negative version of that event. We always hear
Yeah,
like some guy was walking around at 1 a.m. and then he was assaulted by a group of
that's
blah blah. It's always like the worst possible version of events. But we
yeah,
never focus on you'll be walking alone and then you'll see something really funny or someone will say something nice to you.
yeah. I mean, think if you ask anybody, say, "Hey, what do you expect? Which one is more realistic? You wake up in the morning and you've got cancer. Or you woke up in the morning and you have a brand new car on your, in your parking lot and you had no idea where it came from. Well, obviously the cancer is more realistic. For some reason, we have a world that bad news is more believable than good news,
That's
you know?
sad. Now, do you think that the bad news is more believable because there's like truth in that? Like it is just from a probability standpoint, like more bad things are going to happen to you in this world than good things? Or do you think that as human beings, we need to kind of recondition the way we view other human beings and how we view our perception of what's going on around us?
I would say that it's definitely the latter. I would say we need to change that because I truly believe, in spite of my pessimistic worldview, that more good things are happening in this world. I've been sitting and talking to you, and I've been sipping on coffee this whole time. Like that's a wonderful thing. You know what I mean? I get a chance to speak to another human being. I think we're so passive. Good is so passive that we stop noticing it. Like you wake up in the morning. That's a good thing. You walk past a stranger, even if he or she didn't say hello, he or she didn't stab you. That's
Yeah,
a good
right.
thing.
So yeah, good is very benign. It's like, and we take it for granted. I think that's another thing is that when something is good, we're also very entitled creatures. So when
Absolutely.
we have good things happening to us, we're like, well, it's supposed to be that way. Like
Supposed to
that
be.
it's supposed to be that way. That lady at the cashier table, she was supposed to smile at me, and she was supposed to wish me a good day. Like I'm entitled to all these nice pleasantries. But if we actually put ourselves in check and say, she probably didn't have to be that nice to me, but she was,
Yeah.
then we start really viewing the world as a much more magical place. And that's entirely perception.
Yeah. And every simple kind action becomes, you know, a, 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 a grand gesture of, of mercy and the gratitude you begin to feel because you know that it's not you're not entitled to it. People are
Right.
doing this of their own choice, and that's the thing about goodness. If choice is not involved, it cannot really be good you
Yes,
know
because you're compelled. The cashier or the Walmart greeter, they might be forced to smile at you. But you
yeah,
know where you can really test someone's like, have you ever held the door open for somebody and you didn't really
yeah,
have to? You held open the door, and there's people that will look you in the eyes and be like, thank you. And then there's
yeah.
these people that just walk through the door and they don't say thank you. And they think that that kind of goodness is just an entitlement. Like they think, yeah, people should just be opening the door for
The
me.
door.
And
Yeah.
then I think that's a matter that right there is you can tell everything about a person right there if they thank
Yeah.
you, because that thank you person is like, wow, what a wonderful gentleman. He's opening the door for me. And then
Yeah.
there's like, oh, I'm entitled to this goodness 24/7. Let's keep it rolling.
My good man, it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So to summarize our thoughts a little bit, we need a balance between being social and being alone. I think these things are important. The last thing I kind of want to touch upon is how our society views loners or views people that kind of work alone. This has actually happened to me a lot in the workplace. Collaborate, collaborate. You got to collaborate. You got Dropbox, and you got to share all these files with one another and do this and that. And I'm like, I'm perfectly capable of doing this on my own, and I think better by myself. We seem to live in a world where everything has to be group think, group work, group everything. And if someone says thanks, but no thanks, I'm quite content sitting here. But even I hear like people writing TV shows, they have to work with other people. It's not enough for one guy to just close the door and bust out a novel or bust out a screenplay. But he needs like kind of the input of others. Why is it like how can we pivot society so we start looking at the loner or the creative type as being an asset rather than something we have to fix?
For some reason, has the loner has a bad rap. Okay.
Yes.
And because I mean, when you watch films, the loner is usually there are two types of loner in films. Okay, there's the loner who is the Lone Ranger. He's riding his horse. He's a badass. Okay, he can kill four guys with a spoon. Okay,
With a spoon, I love it.
and and that's one kind of loner. That's the one kind of loner. And the second loner is the guy who's sitting Ted Kaczynski. He's in a forest somewhere
Yeah.
and he's shipping off bombs to anywhere and everywhere, just trying to hurt people. Okay, well, the latter is far more believable because of the world we're living in. Bad news, believable. Strangers, strangers are a stranger is most likely to hurt you than to, I don't know,
To be a
give you
wonderful
candy.
person, right?
Yeah, be a wonderful person. So I think the loners have a bad rap today because I mean, especially now with we've had a spike or should I say a frequency in school shootings, and should I say just really is because it hasn't just been schools, it's just been shootings, and you
Yeah,
find a
of
lot of these
course.
guys end up being loners, and so we have a very negative view of what it means to be a loner. Now, at the same time, when it comes to collaboration, this is where it gets weird because I think people want to look like they're connecting. Here's the thing, they don't really want to connect. They want to look like they're connecting. So the boss comes in, the boss calls a meeting, right? And he says, okay, everybody, here's a hula hoop. All right, we're all going to move this hula hoop in a circle while chanting this wonderful mantra of love and
I've been
and
in those,
peace.
yeah, I've been in those like hippie workplaces before.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, here's the difference. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to get us all together, trying to get us all in sync, trying to get us all to care for one another, understand that we're part of a team, to work well together. But that's weird because what you're doing is you're doing it artificially. What
Yes.
you're saying is because we are together in this holding this hula hoop and chanting this mantra, and a stranger looking in from the outside will say, "What a beautiful picture of community. It must be community." No, it's not community because our hearts haven't changed. Our innermost, our psyches, the way we look at the world, the way we look at these people around us, really hasn't changed. And so you find that we want to have these really good community, picturesque, movie-esque situations going on in our lives, but we're removing the very foundation of that, which is, in fact, individuality. Because choice, if people don't choose to come together, they're not really coming together. If people
Yes,
aren't,
yes.
and if they're not individuals looking at each other, self-sufficient individuals looking at each other and saying, I want to work with you, which is a great compliment. When a person is fully themselves, when a woman is a woman and a man is a man, and they look at each other and say, I pick you, that's a great compliment, because she could have picked anybody, he could have picked anybody, but it shows each other, all right?
As long as it's not an arranged marriage or something.
As long as sometimes those work out, but yeah. So you find that they are taking away the individuality, or that, should I say, that loner like quality of those people. They're actually stopping the actual connection that's supposed to be made.
That is a great explanation, because I've actually been in those situations where I had to hold the ring or something with other people, and it's like I was just saying in my head the entire time, I'm just sitting here smiling because I know if I don't smile and I say I want to sit over there, I'm going to get fired. So I
Yeah,
was literally just being forced to like pretend to get along with these people, and it's not genuine at all. I think that people that want to work together will naturally seek each other out. And, in every school I've worked at, let's say there were 40 teachers in that school. Now,
yeah,
I wasn't a complete, like, get out of my office, don't even look at me. But I found like my 5 or 6 people that I like talking to. And,
yeah,
you know, it's not that I hated everyone else, although there were some people that I'm like, just please get away from me. But
yeah.
most people were in the middle, and then I had my 5 or 6 people that I'm like, okay, we're totally on the same wavelength here, and I want to work with you, and I want to talk with you. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that at all. I think that's
Mhm.
perfectly natural, because it's perfectly fine to want to work with the people that you want to work with. You don't have to like everybody. And we gotta, as a society, just get over this stigma of you have to be super agreeable and super flexible, because to a certain degree, when you become ultra flexible, you are compromising who you are as an individual. Like, you can have, like, if you work with 40 people and you're friends with 5 of those people, you can still maintain 95% of your individuality. You're not going to be 100% like walking around the office in your underwear individual, but you're
Yeah.
you're 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 going to be pretty much who you are, give or take a few things. But if you have to change who you are to such a degree that everyone in that office likes you, you've stopped being a person.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who said it. It was a song I was listening to a couple months back, and he said that we often replace, I believe it's kindness, with something along with kindness with agreeability, something like that. In that the person who's smiling and nodding and saying yes sir, isn't really kind. They're just being a yes man. And that's not the kind of person you want on your team, because you say, well, I'm going to drive this bus off a cliff. Yes sir, go ahead. Like, that's you don't want that person on your team. You want people who are kind enough to say, I know you really want to do this, but let's look at the let's look at the consequences, okay? A person who will actually be honest with you. But you find that in the work situation today, that's not really what people are looking for. They're looking for the yes men, but not in the sense, of
Or
course,
team
nobody likes it.
player, team players.
Team player.
Yeah.
We dress it up in very different, very in a more agreeable way, because nobody wants to hear yes men anymore. But yeah, team player is a perfectly wonderful way of saying that.
I see no difference between the yes man and the team player, because you ultimately want people on your team that are going to get the bus where it needs to be, and not just sit there and watch the bus go off the cliff. And
Yeah,
oftentimes, when somebody speaks out and says, hey, this bus is going off a cliff, they're actually just labeled as being negative. Like, oh,
yeah,
you're negative. You're not a team player. And I'm like, hey, I'm here trying to save everyone's life. That doesn't make
yeah.
me negative. That makes me the one sane person on the bus.
Yes, in the words of Jules from Pulp Fiction, if my answers scare you, cease asking scary questions. Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's not negative. These are not negative things. This is just we don't Sometimes even the truth is looked at as negative. And as I love the name of your podcast, by the way, it's
Truth
wonderful.
Island, yeah.
Truth Island, and the truth is often looked at as something negative. This, it's something. If it hurts, it must be negative. If it's disturbing in any way, if it makes me uncomfortable, if it makes me think, if it makes me flustered, it must be negative, and therefore it cannot be truth.
Yes, yes, and a lot of truth comes from loners, and I think when we start evaluating the truth, and because Socrates was the ultimate loner, right? Like
Oh
he
yeah.
he was the ultimate loner, but look how much truth came out of there. So I think that when we start, I think society is going to be going in a much more positive direction when we once again start valuing the loner. How does that sound, Kenny?
I think that sounds lovely. I think that sounds true. I think it is true in the fact that I would even say that everybody should aspire to be a loner to some extent. You know what I mean? We all need that time to think. We all need that time to feel what we actually feel. We all need that time to ask questions. We all need that time to breathe. Many of us need that time to pray for those who believe in a God. You know what I mean? So, um, the quality of the aloneness is incredibly important for the human condition.
Absolutely. I think that about does it, Kenny. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh my goodness, thank you, Aaron. Thank you for having me.
This concludes the 14th episode of the Truth Island podcast. I'm Aaron Azrod. Please stay tuned for our next episode.